Release management allows us to specify automation for how to deploy applications to various servers, as well as specify an approval workflow that will track a release through a pipeline. Let me show you an example of a pipeline. Here I have the Fab Fiber path. In this case I only have two environments, dev and prod. The build is going to move from left to right through the stages we've defined. So it'll first go into dev. Once it's been accepted, which is automated in this case, it'll go through the deployment phase, which is the automation to deploy the application. The validation step is also automated in dev, and finally it'll be up to Tony Stark to approve this build in this environment. Once Tony approves that, it's going to go into the production environment. In this case the acceptance step is not automated, so someone is going to have to specify that this environment is ready to accept the build. In this case it'll be someone from the mobile team. The deployment again will do an automated deployment. The validation is again automated in this case, and then again Tony Stark is going to approve that the deployment and the release are successful in the production environment. We can of course set security on these groups to make sure that only the right people have the approval privileges that are required. For the applications, we have to specify components. These are all the bits of our application that are going to be deployed. In our case, we've got the Fab Fiber site, which is the site to go into IIS, as well as the Fab Fiber DB, which is the database component. Each of these components specifies where it's found in the build drop and what deployment mechanism is used to deploy that particular component. We can also specify configuration variables, which are different depending on which environment we're deploying to. For example, the connection string is going to be different in the dev environment than it is in the production environment. Once we have the components and environments, we can specify a release template. The release template will give us a workflow for each environment. In this case, RM server is the server that we have for our dev environment, and so we can only deploy to RM server. Here you'll see I have two components on my surface, the Fab Fiber DB, which is the database, and the Fab Fiber site, which is the website. And I've also specified the values for various parameters for those components for the dev environment. If we switch over to the prod environment, you'll see that I have two different machines, Fab Fiber DB and Fab Fiber server. Of course, the database is going to be deployed to Fab Fiber DB, while the website is deployed to the Fab Fiber server. These two can run in parallel since they're on different machines. And again, we've specified different configuration settings for those components in this particular environment. Releases can be triggered from builds, but they can also be manually queued. Let's go to releases and queue a new release of the Fab Fiber site. We'll call this the demo release. We can call this release whatever we want to. We'll select the particular path, and if we click latest, it'll select the latest build, which is 10022. I'm going to click start so we can start the deployment process. The release through the dev environment is now sitting at the approval step. We can see the history by viewing the log, from accept deployment to validating to the approval, which is now pending. If we look at our email, we'll see that release management has sent us an email asking us to approve or reject a deployment, and it'll give us the details of what deployment we're required to approve. Let's click View Request to open up that approval. Here we can see that we don't need any tools in order to do approvals for release management. All we need is a browser. Here we can see the demo release. We can see which state it's in, and we can see what's going to come next. We're currently in the dev state and we're in the to approve phase, and the next stage will be production. At this point, Tony would go and check that he's happy with everything that's been deployed onto the dev environment. He can reassign this to someone else, reject it, or approve it. In this case, we'll approve it. Once we've approved it, it's going to go to the next stage in the pipeline, which is the production stage. The production stage doesn't do any deployment because we don't have automated acceptance. So here we can see we're immediately presented with another approval waiting for acceptance. This is because even though the package might be ready to go into production, we may have specific rules about when we deploy. For example, we may not deploy during office hours. At this case, we can approve, and not only do we have a space to make a comment, but we can also select the time and date we want the deployment to occur. Leaving this empty will do the deployment immediately. Otherwise, we can select a specific day and time for the deployment to occur. If we do this, the workflow will sleep until that particular time, and then the deployment will kick off.